Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Tom Tobin, president of the club, and we're thrilled to have you join us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30. Come out and join us for a meeting. We would love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact we're having on our local community and the world, visit our website, rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and help us share the message that Rotary connects the world.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests.
Good morning, Ron.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Phil Tobin.
Morning, everybody. Good morning, Phil. Morning, Dad. Hey, there's a picture of the school. Oh, we need a microphone. Boy, that's a beautiful building. Our invocation, this is about differences. Heavenly Father, thank you for our differences, our talents, our dreams, our backgrounds, our life's work. And it's good to know that you made us different. That we thank you that we can take these differences and work together for the good of Rotary and our community of Hudson. In our differences, we can think the same thoughts and move towards a common goal of service to others. Bless this food to our liking and us to your service. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron. Bill? Watch your step. Gotta watch that wire, though. Yep.
To lead us in the pledge and four-way test, Bob Krampf.
Couldn't find the flag. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. First. Is it the truth? Second. Is it fair to all concerned? Third. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And to lead us in song, Chris Barker.
Morning, everyone. Oh, it's nice being able to walk with this thing. So, Mr. Field suggested that we all sing You Are My Sunshine. But if memory serves me correct, when we get into like the second and third verses, it gets kind of strange with the lyrics. So normally we'll just sing verse 1 2 times. Okay? Yeah, something about, but if you leave me for another, you'll regret it someday. We don't want to go there. So if everyone would please join me in singing You Are My Sunshine, verse 1 2 times. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. So please don't take my sunshine away. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Thank you, everybody.
Actually, you could do the first and the third verse, and it would work out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next time we'll do first and third.
Since they're the same. And to introduce our guests, no guests, our president, Tom Tobin.
Oh, yeah.
Is looking for somebody.
We have one guest, don't we? Help me out. Name. Terry Bortnick is with us this morning, please. And it's her fourth meeting with us, so good to see you, Terry. Thank you for being here. Welcome. All right. Thanks, Brian. All right. Good morning, Rotarians. our last meeting in January. We got a busy one today, so we just have a couple of quick notes, and then we'll get right to it. Let's see. First of all, with Tom Page being recovering from his surgery, we need probably a little extra help on AV. I would think both the setup and possibly takedown. So if there are any members who are early birds or like to hang around after the meeting and would be interested in helping out with that, please let me know. I would appreciate that. All right, second of all, there is a card for Tom Page going around. Liz got it going, and please get it around the room and get it back to Liz by the end of the meeting. And I also would like to acknowledge and thank Evan Nipp for helping us out with audiovisual this month. He's our representative of the service learning class. And as I learned this morning, I guess he's a star pitcher on the Hudson High School baseball team. So you'll have an opportunity to see him play if you go over to the field this spring and cheer on our Explorers. All right, I think that's all I have for the moment. If I could ask Evan to come on up and kick the ball off on our featured presentation. Thank you, President.
Good morning, fellow Rotarians. How is everyone this morning? Wonderful. Well, this week wraps up our Vocational Service in Action Month, and we'll look forward to a speaker series next month on health and wellness. But today we have the pleasure of hearing from 3 of our Rotarians, and thank you to Donna Kastner and Patrick Shearer, Elizabeth Kwolek, and George Schneider for presenting this month. You guys did excellent, and we really appreciate you sharing. So this morning, we're going to go through a quick introduction of the 3 individuals, and by quick introduction, I mean name and titles. We'll have about 15 minutes for each of the participants, followed by a panel-style question and answer. To kick us off this morning, Bill Wooldridge is going to come forward. He's a community volunteer. After Bill, we'll hear from Andy Morse, who's a current CEO, and then followed up by Jay Yard, who's a retired financial advisor and branch manager. So we'll go ahead and get things started, and we'll have Bill come on up.
Well, good morning, Rotarians. I've already received some advice, which was, keep it short. Well, it's been so long since I retired from gainful employment. That was about 18 years ago that I can't remember. So I'm going to talk about what I've been doing ever since. And that'll be the focus of this talk. I decided I would spend my years in retirement, the last 18 years, in community service. And this decision was mainly based, it was a faith-based decision. I have to say I really enjoy the work. I've been involved in a lot of organizations. And I like looking at the results of the work sometimes. A lot of times it's very gratifying to see what comes about. And when I say get involved, I mean both time and money, because I think it's important to, if you have some money, to put it back into some things you believe in. And both Joe and I believe in that very strongly about giving back into the community. And my community focus, some of you probably know, has been mainly children and the city of Hudson, both of which I feel very strongly about. As far as children goes, and I came to this conclusion as I kind of started doing things over the years, I suddenly realized that's where I really cared. That's what I really had a passion about. So as far as children goes, I've been on the board of Akron Children's Hospital for about 40 years. And there was a 3-year period when I served as the chairman of that board and have chaired several parts of that organization ever since. Another area I've been involved with is the Hudson City Schools Foundation. Dan Williams has been involved with that, and Ed Sogan's been the president of it for many years. But I think Dan and I and several others were involved in starting that up quite a few years ago. Another one is the Hudson City Schools Student Assistance Fund. Probably most of you don't know what this is, but if you were to delve into this, you'll find out about 4.5% of the children in our Hudson City schools qualify for the federal free lunch program. That is, they have poor families. And as a result of that, they can't participate or don't have the money to participate in some of the activities that require some kind of fee. So what this fund does, which I started up about 10 years ago, is have an endowment. It's about $100 and some thousand now. And each year we take 5% of that endowment and give it towards these needy kids. And that's been very gratifying because I've heard some wonderful stories about what's happened with some of these kids who otherwise could not have enjoyed some of the things that other kids had. Another area I've been very involved with that involved children is the Salvation Army. I've been a life member of that board now for several years. And the Salvation Army experience for me has been a wonderful one because it's a wonderful way to give back into our community. The thing I most enjoyed was taking people through the food pantry. They have a food pantry down at 190 South Maple Street, and you'd be amazed at the amount of poverty in Akron. It's just astounding. And so a lot of families qualify for the use of that pantry. And what I've been able to do, not recently because I've had a problem with my foot, but I would take families through for a couple of hours on a Monday afternoon. And sometimes it was very, very heartwarming. I mean, there were times when people told me they were entitled to it, there were times they didn't appreciate it, but you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be. Most families really, really appreciated the fact that they could get food for their meals for the next week. A lot of times they'd bring their kids with them, and it was just amazing to see these kids go around the room and, I want this, I want that. And it was a neat experience. Hudson. My other passion's really been Hudson. About 20 years ago, some guy named Phil Tobin, he's sitting over there, came up to me and said, "Bill, we really ought to have a community foundation in Hudson." I thought he might be a little crazy, but after we met and talked for quite a while, we started up the Hudson Community Foundation. And today, that foundation has about $23 million in it, and it has a wonderful building, as you probably know, right over on the green, the old Baldwin House. Early on, in the first couple of years, we met up at the Hudson Country Club, and we decided to have a strategic plan. And we talked through about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. Finally, we came to the realization that Hudson's really a city about kids. You know, we have, 4,600 kids in the public schools, and we have Western Reserve Academy and Montessori, and we have a lot of schools. And really, we are really a city. A lot of people move into Hudson because of the kids. And so we decided we're going to focus on kids. Well, how do you do that? Well, there was something called Community First, which had kind of not disappeared, but it kind of wasn't doing anything. And one of our officers, Jack Liskey, got so enamored of this and involved with it that when we decided to embrace Community First, he eventually became the leader of it. I think he's been involved with it ever since. It's amazing what's happened over the last 15 so years. And Community First, as you probably all know, is a wonderful, wonderful part of our community. I think the other thing about Hudson Community Foundation I'd like to mention, it's a little bit of a pitch, but if you want to start a way of giving money back to your community, you can set up your own fund, but you do it with the Hudson Community Foundation. You can start up a donor-advised fund, which is like having your own private fund, and you can do it for really no cost. So it's a wonderful way, if you want to do something like that, to go to the Community Foundation. I'll be glad to take you over and meet Amy Jordan and introduce you. And for $10,000, you can set up your own fund. You put the money in and get the tax deduction. You give the money out whenever you want to. It's a very simple and wonderful way to do it. The other thing about Hudson Community Foundation is its motto and its focus is enrich Hudson forever. And that's what we're trying to do, is to continue this place to be the wonderful, wonderful city that it is. The other thing I did in Hudson for quite a while was head up Hudson Economic Development Corporation. That is what it sounds like. It was focused on economic development. It was started up by the city council, put some money into it, and then we kind of separated. And we were very involved in pushing and helping get going First in Maine, which was, of course, a signature project for this city, of course, and headed up by Tom Murdo. Another area I've been involved with is my friend Dan Williams over there, has been city council. City council can take a lot of time, or you can have a short meeting like we had last night. You never know. It also can be very rewarding. I mean, First in Maine is a tremendously rewarding thing. but it can also be, at times, quite frustrating. But it is an experience, and again, it's a city I love, so that's a way to give back. I am involved in my church, which is Hudson Presbyterian Church, that white one on the corner of Boston Mills Road and 303. And I'm currently serving as an elder, which is probably appropriate because of my age. A final thought I'll just share with you. We in Hudson sometimes think of ourselves as a bubble. You know, we're a little oasis in the middle of all this poverty and whatever. But you know, we are part of a larger community, and we could not exist without that larger community. As I've said, I've spent a lot of time working down in Akron, but I also spent some time up in Cleveland. I was a member of, well, just like we have a Leadership Hudson, they have a Leadership Cleveland. I did that back in '93. It was a very interesting experience. But we could not exist without Cleveland and Akron and other cities. Think of all those big, beautiful houses out in Chadds Ford and Fox Trace and so forth. The people, most of the people, a lot of the people working there, or living there, work in Cleveland or Akron. So you wouldn't have the salaries, you wouldn't have the wealth that would afford those houses. So if we didn't have Cleveland and Akron, you simply wouldn't have that base for that wealth that makes up Hudson. The other thing I would have mentioned is that we are inextricably tied to these two great cities. But just think of it. We have one of the greatest orchestras in the world in Cleveland. We have a wonderful one down in Akron. We have I think it's the second largest theater district in the United States in Cleveland. We have wonderful museums up in University Circle. And we have sports teams. I won't qualify them as being wonderful, but we have sports teams. My point is, I don't think Hudson is a bubble. We're part of a larger community. We have to embrace it, and I do, and I would urge you to also. I guess in summary, the retirement years have been very rewarding and very enjoyable. Thank you.
I will hop back up here before Andy takes the mic, and I just wanted to mention that I believe that you are the oldest past president. Earliest past president. I didn't know how to say that properly, but 1994, 1995, this guy was the president of our club. So welcome, Andy Morse.
A whole century ago? Yeah, really. So if I'm the oldest president, I guess I'm going to talk about my retirement. Thank you kindly. Instead, I'm going to talk a little bit because Evan had said, what's your vocational path or whatever else. And so I'm going to come up with the very standard topic of my own personal journey into the world of fabric awnings. I mean, everybody has that same problem, right? Okay, so that's really where I come from. And so if we talk in terms of the career path, I mean, I know a couple of my buddies, for example, they knew what they wanted to study when they went to college. They got right out of college and they went right to where they were supposed to work, and then they kept on going right up the ladder on that thing there. And that's exactly my career path. The exact same. I pushed the next one. My career path is exactly that same way. Okay? I mean, I started out right there, and I knew really where I was going to go, and immediately took an about face and a right turn and everything else. And so kind of when you talk in terms of my career path, I started out as a mathematics major at Case Institute of Technology. Great school, now known to those of you who are a little bit younger than I am, okay, but it's known as Case Western Reserve University, obviously. So I started out at Case, and I was in mathematics, loved it. I felt I was pretty good at it, and then I realized that there were some people who were a lot better than I was in mathematics. And so therefore, it was kind of one of those things of, all right, what else are you going to do? But in mathematics, okay, one of the things, and again, we got Super Bowl coming up here. Need to show you the picture of, obviously everybody knows who that is, right? Who is it? Frank. Exactly. You got Frank Ryan and Jim Brown. And that is, of course, from 1964, when, of course, when we talk back, Bill, when you said about the sports teams, yes, we did have a sports team in 64. But the reason why I show this picture is very simple. Number 13 right there taught me probability and statistics in the spring of 1971. Frank Ryan had a PhD and was a phenomenally intellectual person, and I was blessed to have him as my statistics teacher. Great stories and a great professor too. But anyway, that was he quit teaching and I quit mathematics, both at the same semester. I don't know whether there's a coincidence there or not. And so then I went into German literature, and I've got my master's German literature and my bachelor's of German literature, and that was in the early 70s. And frankly, it was great. I loved it. I love the Romanticism period. It's in German. It's called the Sturm und Drang, and it is with respect to the early Romanticism. Basically the late 17th century. Wonderful writers. Obviously, many of them. Goethe, Schiller, and so that's really kind of where I enjoyed the that whole notion of the German literature. I had was accepted to Indiana University for my PhD in comparative literature, and was really excited about that. And then somewhere along the line, I realized that, again, this is early 70s, modern languages were not being paid very much, okay? I had already realized I enjoyed wine, especially good wine, I'm talking about the bottle of Mogan David and the bottle of, the Riunite. Okay, so I wanted the good wine. Okay, I wanted the straw on the outside of the bottle, and so therefore, like everything else, I then realized that it is nicht in die ferne Zeit verliere dich, den Augenblick ergreif, nur ist dein. And that's from Friedrich Schiller. Okay, written back in that period, and of course. I believed in that, and I'm sorry. Did I forget the translation? I'm sorry. I apologize. Don't lose yourself in distant times. Seize the moment. Only that is yours. Okay? Oops, I'm sorry. And there you go. So then I decided, all right, I'll do my fallback. So what do? I went to law school. Okay? Because, golly, you can't go wrong there. So I went to law school, but I didn't go to law school for the reason of going to be a practicing attorney. No. I went to law school because I wanted to go into Georgetown University for my Master's of Science in Foreign Service, because I thought with my German background and other things, I wanted to do that. All of a sudden, again, when we talk in terms of seize the moment, I wanted to have a family. I'd been married now a number of years, wanted to have a family, wanted to have kids, and so I went to work in Lorain County at the Lorain County Prosecutor's Office. Loved it. Oh my gosh, did I enjoy that. It gave you a whole bunch of trial experience. It gave you an understanding of humanity. It realized how stupid the criminals really are. I mean, I got stories that go on and on and on, but it was just, well, okay. So you had this one girl, okay? She walks into Higbee's. We remember Higbee's. It's now Dillard's, of course. So she goes into Higbee's. Cute little thing. She stands 5 feet tall, weighs about 95 pounds, and she couldn't understand why when she walked out the door she got caught for shoplifting. Well, it's a real simple thing. When you go in at 5 feet, 95 pounds, and you walk out like this, okay, because you have 5 dresses in your pantyhose, of course you're going to be found. Okay, but again, she denied. She thought it was an accident and everything else, and I can appreciate that. So then I stayed with Lorain County Prosecutor's Office. I then did some in-house counsel work, and then I then had my law office here in Hudson. And that was before Regis Smith had modified the place over there, obviously on Clinton Avenue. I was a sole practitioner. Took over a practice from another person here. Jerry Urbanik. I don't know if any of you remember Jerry. But anyway, I had my little office right there on the first floor. And Denny Sachs up on the second floor, Jim Connor down below. So it was a fun time. Then I moved over, before the Muffins were there, to 238 North Main Street, practiced up on the top there. Loved watching everybody walk by. Okay, Ron, it's right around your corner from you. So You know as well as I do how much fun it is to be on Main Street. Exactly, and as well as and that's really where Rotary has come in. It's been a wonderful thing. I mean, obviously, I've been here in Rotary for more than 30 years, it's been a great thing. But then I decided, nope, I think I'm gonna do something different. So then I decided I'd buy an awning company. Okay, that's the Wagner Awning Company. And James Wagner came back from the Civil War, and he started making tents and sails and awnings. And so he actually started the Ohio Awning in 1865. At that time, of course, you had all sorts of, well, that's a little bit later. Obviously, it had a great history. And the awning company back in this is of course in the 30s, and so it had a lot of storage customers and stuff like that. So that's one of our trucks from back then. This was my old building in Tremont. We were there for 85 years. By the way, I bought the company in 1995, and of course this is from the 50s, but still. I love Tremont. Those of you who realize Tremont's had a wonderful renovation and lots of great restaurants and everything else. The sewing department, we used to have up to 300 people there. So you had a whole bunch of people sewing in there. We did a lot of work for the military industry. We did a lot of tents in World War II. We did a lot of tents in the Vietnam War. Oh my gosh, there's some stories about those. As well as there was some of the work that we even did for the first Desert Storm, as far as tents go. A lot of as you saw, it was a 4-story building, so a lot of old wooden floors and room for it. Awnings have been around for a long time. I mean, I think the Egyptians started them. Downtown, you'd find stores that had awnings all over the place. If we look at South Howard Street here in downtown Akron, that's the view of the Greenwood Brothers department store. That's in 1902, obviously. Also in 1902, you got a view of Main Street. I'm sorry, looking towards Market Street. That's O'Neill's dry goods store. Can be seen right there in the center. So awnings were always around. One of the jobs we did was doing some awnings for Stan Hewitt, okay, another one of those small residential homes that we like to help with. Those were specifically requested to match the ones that they had back in the 20s. So it's kind of a fun project to do to try to help out. Ohio Awning, what we've done is we focused a little bit on residential stuff. We focused on commercial things, and basically it's a lifestyle. That's what awnings are all about. We've got, of course, obviously commercial stuff. We do a whole bunch of things, but the things that I kind of like was just a simple, ordinary old downtown Cleveland. Do a little awning. To dress up the windows. Now, one of the things that I've always tried to push for in our company is quality. Okay, I want a decent product, a good quality and everything else that's going to really be there and help out. These awnings here, they lasted exactly 10 days. Okay, it's I try to build them pretty strong, but somehow I couldn't. And then the other ones for over there, those also lasted 10 days. Okay? Yeah, it's ridiculous. That's what happens when the Avengers come to town back in 2011, and we made the movie here, if you remember. Now, for those of you who are aficionados, you're going to watch that movie and you're going to say, where are his awnings? Okay, yeah, it's a real quick picture, trust me. I had to get it on slow-mo to be able to find the damage to the awnings, but there they are. The other thing that I learned in kind of my path is to look for opportunities. So one day I went out and I went to go buy a sewing machine from another sewing operation. And again, what you don't remember is, or what you don't recognize, Ohio, or Cleveland in particular, has been blessed with phenomenal sewing. Okay, we have had an industry here. Hugo Boss, for example, Richmond Brothers, okay? So all of the suits and stuff like that, a lot of that type of stuff has occurred right here. So I went out to go buy a sewing machine from somebody and basically ended up buying his company. And then I turned it into a production sewing department. This is some of the representative of some of the things we used to make. On the top up here, I know, what is that, okay? We used to make Renaissance clothing, okay? So people go out to the parks. There's a huge one in Menor where they reenact the Renaissances, okay? If you're going to reenact it, you got to look like it. Hale Farm, by the way, has the Civil War reenactment in July. Same thing. You have to look the part. So we were making some of those clothes for them, again, on that type of thing. The pink dress down there, I know this is not probably something that most people want to talk about. That is a burial gown, okay? You're going to wear that on the last trip you take. And we used to make some of those, okay, for some of the funeral homes around here. Again, it's called a niche. What's out there? What are some of the people doing? By the way, especially a little trick on the burial gowns. You don't have to worry about the back, okay? Yeah, it's only about the decoration on the front. And then the other thing there, we used to do some work, subcontract work with a company that worked for the Navy. That, by the way, is what nobody would guess it is. All right, anybody got an idea?
It's a survival suit for a boat?
It's a survival suit for a submarine, okay? And so those are self-contained things so that it's all sealed so that you can then put the pressure on it so when you're on the bottom of the ground, bottom of the ocean and your submarine's damaged, you can actually come out. Okay, so we did some of that for a subcontractor. Great thing there. Also got into importing pieces and parts from Switzerland for a retractable awning line. Great thing. They make wonderful stuff. Unfortunately, what I did was I bought that stuff in 2007. Okay, so when you bring in a container of aluminum from Switzerland in 2007, and then you say, okay, I'm going to make a high-end retractable awning, and I was trying to do this on a wholesale basis throughout the country. Terrible timing. Okay, but again, one of the things I learned was look at the opportunities, and again, I've been pleased with those retractable awnings. They've been great, and I know there are some people who will even attest to how beautiful they are. Thank you, Den. Okay, then the next thing we did was we also turned around and we said, all right, I'm having trouble getting some of my frames powder coated. I'm having trouble getting some of these canopies done. So then what I did was actually got into, oops, wrong way, sorry. Started my own powder coat line. So when I moved out of that building, when I moved out of that building in Tremont, we bought a building over on Grant Avenue, right off of 77, 110,000 square feet. So we had extra space in there. So that's where we put our powder coat line. Never had expected to be doing that, but again, it's one of those things that came out of necessity, and so now we do work for other people too. You can see that there's a powder. Here's where you spray the powder on, as the guy's doing down below, as John's doing in the red, and then behind it is actually this is where you then spray them here, and then that's my oven. So you put them in the oven, 450 degrees for 20 minutes, and when the bell rings, you take it out. So just like at the kitchen. Learned a lot of things, okay, and so on my path, I've learned many things. Most of them are things that you guys already know. Don't be afraid of trying different things, which means don't be afraid of failing. But you still have to be smart. You still have to look at the opportunity, and you have to also keep an eye on the key financials. You surround yourself with the best talent. I was lucky. I mean, seriously, okay? You come out of law school and you really know how to sew awnings and weld frames? I don't think so, okay? So you surround yourself with good people, especially on the residential side. I learned that price is totally irrelevant, and you're looking at the vision. You're looking at employees who want to provide an experience and who want to also give you that same good customer service. That's really what we all want. Okay, and if you're going to drive it on price, then the only way you can win is by going lower and lower and lower. In which case, you're giving something away, and that's no fun. So look for the employees. Look for the employees who share that vision. And finally, you have fun. Okay, that's obviously what I've done. I've tried to have fun through the years. But you also then have to balance it with your own personal life and what are the things that really matter on that. And of course, for all of us, it's family. Okay. So I've had a good family. I've got all 3 boys, married, grandchildren. But more importantly, it flows right into the second part, which is some of my activities. And Bill, I don't have as much free time just yet as you do, but the same thing. The free time, mine has been involved around Rotary for the last 30 years. And thank you, Evan, for reminding me I'm the oldest president. Okay, appreciate the thoughtfulness there. But I've also been involved, obviously, as most of you know, with Scouts. All 3 of my boys are Eagles. I'm an Eagle. Had a great time doing that. I love to run. I've run marathons. I'm probably up to about 30 marathons. Run them all over the world. Bermuda, Edinburgh, France, Iceland, and then this last time, just a couple months ago, was in Cuba for one. So we use that as an excuse. But more importantly, I thank you all for the benefits that I've received out of Rotary, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Very interesting. And now we'll have Jay Yard come forward.
If you think Andy's career path was a squiggly line, wait till you hear mine. I do thank you, Evan, and I thank Rotary for their willingness to clump down my career path. It was a wild ride, so you're going to have to fasten your seatbelt. And it had a lot of dead ends, but ultimately it ended up at the right spot, and that was in the position of financial advisor, helping families and small firms plot their futures. I had some early guidance. My dad, his dad, and his dad all went to Cornell and graduated as engineers or architects. Not me. I was a wrestler. I had to go to Lehigh. And I signed up for electrical engineering and engineering physics. Whoa. Fortunately, after 1 year, I escaped into metallurgical engineering, which I think a lot of people felt was alchemy from the medieval days. And I graduated from Lehigh. So I went to work for U.S. Steel in their technical, at Homestead Works of U.S. Steel. And 6 months later, Black Friday hit the steel industry. I escaped with my life and got into sales training, which was a 2-year program. Had some other assignments, and ultimately went on to Detroit to handle the Chrysler Corporation. Before I went to Detroit, I had started my MBA degree at the University of Pittsburgh Katz School of Business. This was probably one of the better things I did, because I was at night school with a number of middle managers from all kinds of different industries. And I learned about teamwork, I learned about communications, I learned about sharing ideas. And believe me, you can't succeed in any business without the ability to communicate. I finished that degree and decided to look around and see what might be available, might be interesting. I found the publishing industry, of all things. And so I went with a small publishing company by the name of Production Magazine out of Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and was assigned to Pittsburgh. Because of my steel industry background, I was perfect for selling advertising space to the steel companies. Well, that lasted about 7.5 years. Thoroughly enjoyed it, worked from home, had time to coach my son in baseball, football, soccer, so on. And I had a chance to become involved with the advertising industry. I became president of the Business Professional Advertising Association and also president of the Upper St. Clair Athletic Association. But ultimately, I was promoted to chemical engineering and sent to New York, and looked out the window in Manhattan. I thought, nope, Manhattan is not my kind of town. It was awfully hard to coach Little League when you were working downtown Manhattan. So I quickly contacted some friends in Pittsburgh, and I found a person that had just been made managing partner of a mid-sized law firm. He said, come on down. You can help me run this firm. We need some strategic planning. We need marketing. We want to grow the firm. So I thought, this sounds perfect. So I joined the management committee there. The first thing I did was call a meeting of all the practice heads. And my idea was that they each should do some strategic planning for their practice areas and plan to do some marketing. No one spoke in the meeting. No one was buying my act. And so I thought, well, okay, I guess I have to lead the way. So I decided that I would develop a glossy brochure, and I would feature all of the partners and their practice areas, high-quality graphics, descriptions of what they did. And so I created this brochure and sent it out to clients and sent it to the industry. And about a week later, I get a call from Steve Brill, editor of The American Lawyer. He is the voice of the legal industry. He said, I'd like to interview you. Talk about the brochure. Fine. So we had about an hour's interview with the managing partner and myself. And we thought afterwards, this is great. We're going to get national coverage for our new brochure. Well, unbeknownst to us, Steve had talked to many of the partners that were featured in the brochure, and they hated it. They did not want to market themselves. They did not want to be in a glossy brochure. Their business came through referrals. So I thought, uh-oh, this is the end of my job. But my managing partner said one thing. He said, Jay, they spelled our name right, and no one's ever going to forget it. Some comfort. We quadrupled the size of that firm and became highly profitable. Unfortunately, I was talked into going with a very large law firm in Pittsburgh with 800 lawyers to help them strategically plan and market and so on. And we got involved in one of the largest law firm mergers in history with a Pearson Ball and Dowd in Washington, D.C. So my job was to administer this whole process and financially structure the new entity. However, what we didn't know was the litigators in the firm didn't like it at all. Well, the merger went through, but the managing partner and myself lost our jobs. So there I was, having done good work out on the street. Along came Art Rooney. Art Rooney had a small law firm in Pittsburgh, and he said, I need somebody to help me grow this and do some planning and marketing, because he was in transition to becoming president of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I went through the drill with Art. Art was an interesting guy. He never spoke in a meeting. He'd sit there and he'd make various faces, and then he'd say, okay, let's meet again next week. That's why he was such a good negotiator with football players. After 3 years of that, I thought, okay, I've gotten enough experience in this industry. I can move on and start my own business. So I started Professional Services Management. And this was an attempt to use my expertise and apply it to various professional industries, the legal industry, the financial industry, the medical industry, and the architectural industry. I landed a lot of great projects, and I really enjoyed it. Particularly one was a law firm in Scranton where they had 2 managing partners, and I had to come in and analyze what was wrong with the firm. Why weren't they succeeding? And of course, I had to write up and recommend that they get rid of one of the managing partners. And then I quickly got out of Scranton. In this process, I did become president of the legal administrators, and I taught a lot of people that were trying to manage law firms and bring them into the new era of marketing and planning. So I did some work as a consultant, and I had two really high-profile jobs. One was to lead the Allegheny County Bar Association with 6,000 members and 24 board meeting members in a strategic planning process. You talk about herding cats. We finally came out with a product, and we did accomplish some things. And then next, I was invited to do a study for the Pennsylvania Bar Association on legal advertising. Now, this is in the 80s, and there were just a few lawyers starting to advertise. And I'm sure they asked me to conduct this study because they felt I was going to come up with the result that legal advertising wasn't needed. It was beneath the dignity of the industry. It had no value. Well, I came up with exactly the opposite. And I proved that the public wanted to see legal advertising because they wanted to understand what lawyers did and how to hire them. So after a few years of that, and in the meantime, I had been appointed after 15 years as Parks and Recreation Director for the township. I was appointed to a commissioner's job, which lasted 5 years. And believe me, Bill, Dan, that was the toughest job I ever had. And about a year into the process, my wife insisted that I get an answering machine, because she was tired of talking to all the citizens with their ideas for how to run the place. So I decided it was time to get back into an industry, a professional firm, where I could do what I do, and I could leverage all the different experiences that I've had. And so I joined I found the investment business. And I found it at the time when competition was really taking over. The banks were getting into investments, retail investment, internet investment, discounters, investment bankers. So I knew that this industry needed very sophisticated marketing, and training was going to be imperative. So I joined my previous client, Parker Hunter, in Pittsburgh, which was 100 financial advisors, and was in charge of just about everything. And the fun of this job was that I got to do TV programs, and I was the ghostwriter for the business editor of the Pittsburgh Business publication. At that time, we decided to merge with a major firm out of Philadelphia, Janney Montgomery Scott. And I had to administer that whole combination, in which case I worked myself out of a job because I wasn't about to transfer to Philadelphia. So I ended up moving into branch management, and ultimately, in my 23 years in the financial industry, I spent the last 5 years as a financial advisor. And to me, that was the best thing that I ever did. And in that process, I developed a lot of schematics. I like to always design what it looks like to the client. And this was one schematic I used for my services. Here was another. Here's the wealth management checkup and the things that you should consider. And another was just talking about the process and how I was going to work with a particular client to come out with the best results. So what did I learn in this wild ride? I learned that you can leverage your past, and you can develop positions that draw upon all of your experiences. Planning, marketing, HR skills, they're all transferable to many, many industries. I learned to build teams, make communications priority, and to set goals. I learned to figure out what makes a business unique and then tell the world, but not until you've convinced your management and the employees. It can backfire. I realized that I needed to be very involved with outside organizations and in the community because you learn techniques from people in similar industries. Don't fight technology, but explain it to your employees, explain it to your clients, and then move on. And of course, maintaining a balance of activities, of being involved in Rotary, in community activities, as well as your work, leads to sanity, because there's always something good happening that you can fall back on. And I certainly learned that without the four-way test and those principles, no one can succeed in industry. So folks, that is my career. I've started a new business. I'm not going to talk about that now. But in my 80th year, I'm all excited about marketing again. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Jay. And now if I could have our three presenters come forward. We have just a few minutes here for some question and answer. So if you want to come forward. And I'm gonna kick it off here. Here's a microphone. All right. So question for each of you. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I was going to say the same thing. I don't have to make that choice yet, do I?
Senior year in high school. Not old enough?
No, not old enough.
I wanted to be a coach. Not in business, in sports.
Sports coach?
And I was terrible at most sports.
Bill?
Well, I wanted to be a doctor. I'm not sure why I wanted to be a doctor, and I got to college and I realized I wasn't going to be a doctor.
And I guess I would say I have absolutely no clue. And I haven't even started to grow up yet, so.
Question for Andy Morse. When you had the epiphany that you wanted to leave the legal practice and acquire a company, how did you go about finding Ohio Awning, and why that as opposed to something else?
Good question. Actually, what I realized was in order to make more money, I had to do one of three things. I had to charge more money to my customer or to my clients. Didn't really want to do that. I thought I was already charging a fair price. Had to work more hours. Really didn't want to do that because I really wanted to do time with the Boy Scouts, time with my family. So that wasn't going to be a solution. And then the third thing was to bring in a whole bunch of other people to do that. And obviously, Jay, you can attest to bringing in more people and partners and all the rest. Really didn't want to do that either. So that's why I ended up looking for a manufacturing operation where when I was backpacking at Philmont in New Mexico for 2.5 weeks, I got people back there doing the work and actually making money as opposed to no billable hours. So, and as far as the awning company goes, it really was I kind of fell into it more than anything else because I actually had helped somebody here in Hudson buy that awning company 18 months earlier. Put the deal together. It was basically going into bankruptcy, and we put this deal together in like basically 4 weeks. He turned it around, and I stayed in contact with him because he lives right here in Hudson. And but after about a year or so, he says, "I really don't like the stress. I want out." And I said, "Well, if you're going to get out, I'm going to get in." He says, "You can't get in. You're an attorney. That's a stupid idea." And I said, "Well, you shouldn't get out. That's a stupid idea too." So between the two of us, each telling each other that we were stupid, we decided, all right, let's do it. And that's how I actually got into it. And as I say, knew nothing about sewing, but I did know about the operation. Had stayed with this guy and had fun.
Andy, thank you for that. Sounds like all three of you had very busy lives so far. So it's really interesting to hear about each one of your work careers and your past. In 15 words or 20 words or less, I know it's hard for Andy, but if you could say what's the most rewarding, I think Jay might have referred to the financial investment part. But what was the most rewarding for the three of you out of your work careers? Which one, Andy?
I'd say the most rewarding thing is when you find out what you're really passionate about, seeing success. And I mentioned earlier Phil Tobin. came to me about the Hudson Community Foundation. Well, it's very rewarding to see how that organization has grown up, now $23 million, but provides so much for citizens of Hudson and for the future of the city.
I think for me, being president of so many industry groups was the most rewarding thing, because when you're inside a firm, you're not sure that you're doing all the right things or that you're that much appreciated. But when you get into an industry group, you understand what you've brought to the party.
I am. For me, probably it would be two things. One is, it's most rewarding, is I've given a number of individuals a livelihood, okay? They're not just making a salary, they're actually improving their lives, and I've actually had a benefit to help them with that. The second most important thing to me is the aspect of mentoring some of the other people that I brought in, but actually I've got my son involved. He's been with me now for 15 years, mentoring him and seeing his growth to where he has now taken over and has bought me out of the company, but you know, I'm still there to make a mess of things. But mentoring is probably the second part that I would say is just most rewarding.
Great. So this has been fantastic. There's so much talent in this room. To have you all tell your story like that, I really enjoyed it a great deal. So question for James around the legal profession and the advertising. So, I mean, I guess I'm going to never, ever look at I'll make them pay and not think of you. It's kind of gotten out of hand, huh?
Depends on how you view it. Well, I have a confession to make that I did some marketing for Edgar Snyder in Pittsburgh, who is famous for saying, "And we will get money for you." Very sophisticated marketing, and actually performed quite a service for the public. So I think it works.
Sure. We'll make them pay. I was actually going to change that. I'll make you shade. But it just doesn't have the same ring.
Yeah, I think each of you touched on this, but probably at several points in your careers, you faced some crisis, business about to go under or something. You talked about buying into products that, was not a good time. But, so maybe you could recount, how you were able to overcome that, when things were looking bleak and get through that.
Go ahead, you got the microphone.
I can't think of one specific situation. There have been various times in my career, going back, various times in my career when I've had situations where were we going to stay in this business? Was it going to succeed? I think probably the hardest thing was working with an old tire rubber company. There were a lot of businesses that just didn't make sense. And the hardest thing was, how do you get out of them? How do you do it without losing a lot of friends, hurting a lot of people? But it was a very difficult thing to do.
I think the most difficult thing I had to do, and that was to entertain the examiners from the industry when I was in the financial business, because they looked at everything you told your clients and everything you sold and decided that it was wrong and you had to prove them otherwise. No fun.
And I guess my response would be, I have tried different things. Some of them have failed, and the problem has always been, how fast do you pull the trigger to get out of what you did, okay? And that's really been one of the things that, for me, I've been slow to learn, okay? I've kept things going too long. Same thing as Bill, because people are involved in it, and you're trying to, help those employees. And at some point, you have to say, sorry, it just makes no physical sense.
Thank you, guys. That was really great. Hey, just a couple things as a follow-up to that. First of all, Andy, I apologize if I stepped on your move there with that picture of Frank Ryan and Jim Brown. You probably was expecting people to say Jim Brown, but hey, along the line, this whole vocation thing, there was something that caught my attention, I think, when I was checking out some news website yesterday about, did you guys see this thing about, there's this guy who's playing for the Kansas City Chiefs who is a medical doctor now, very first medical doctor in the history of the NFL. I think that's kind of really amazing, They used to have to, they used to, back in the 50s and 60s, like, Frank Ryan's time, they would have to work a second job to really make the professional football career work. This guy is an incredible overachiever. All right, let's see. I also just had reminisce on one thing, Dad. You probably recognize that picture of our old office. Andy had it up there on Clinton Street. Regis Smith's office. Dad and I were there for a few years. It was a bit of a step down from the luxurious suite that we had upstairs at what is now Binary Defense, across from the clock tower. We lost our location there. Had to move to the basement of that building, Andy. Yeah, well, Jim Connor was there. He was a civil engineer sort of person and worked But while we were there, Regis Smith recruited my dad to join Rotary, and then later on, Den recruited me, and so that's where that all started. So I think we need a plaque on that building, by the way. Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to take one quick informal thing, because I've seen this when we've done career awareness programs at the high school, and I found that we'll bring up 5 folks to do something similar to what we did today for the students. And inevitably, 4 out of the 5 have a career path that's very similar to Jay's and to Andy's. And I think I'm just kind of curious, that question that we heard earlier, how many, just a show of hands, how many folks in this room ended up following the path they envisioned for themselves, their senior year of high school, their senior year of college, their career path actually resembled that? 1, 2, 3. Oh, is that it? Isn't that interesting? I think that's so fascinating. And I think that's very telling for our student, Evan, today. Evan, no matter what you're thinking right now, high probability. Don't worry about it, Don't worry about it. It's all about what Bill said, finding your passion, what you're passionate about. I know you hear that over and over again, but be open to opportunities and share that message back with your fellow students. Yeah, Dad, come on up well, I need a microphone. So come on up. And then let's see. While Phil's coming up, I'm going to do the Rotabuck here. That's it. Wow, we had a lot of Rotabucks this morning. Go ahead.
I want to comment on what a wonderful job Evan has done in bringing this type of an experience where we get up and talk about each other's activities. I think that's a marvelous thing, is to realize, again, we talked about today our differences when I started. And listening to the people here, I think has been an enormously wonderful thing for us. I might even suggest that this become part, not every meeting, but maybe once a month or once every 2 months, where we assign an individual to come up or a couple of individuals to come up and do the same thing. I found a lot that I learned from this, and I think we all would benefit from that in the future. I'll leave it up to you, Tom.
Yeah, that's great. Great suggestion. And I love it that we're doing it's vocational service, which is always a little bit, I have a hard time wrapping my arms around that. I love it that we did our careers and we did our community service type things as well. I think those are, all right, anyway, let's see here. The last 4 digits, can you read that?
If it's mine, I'll read it.
Yeah.
You want me to read mine? I'll just
No.
Okay. The last 4 digits is 2893.
2893. All right, today's payout is $14. Do we have a winner? All right, Bill McClure. Oh, don't we have a lockout for the first 6 months of membership? Yeah. All right, and today's jackpot is $217. Let me find the there's that. All right. Notice there is a black marble in there. Oh, he got it! Bill McClure. There's definitely a lockout for that. All right. All right. So see Ben. See Ben. Ben will $217. Is that what it is on the thing there? And we're not going to tell your family, so it's All right. Along the lines of that wavy career path that Andy showed us and Jay described. I was reminded when I saw that. Thinking of, is it the Yogi Berra thing? I came to the fork in the road and I took it. I think you guys did some of that along the way. All right. I don't think I have anything else to announce today. Anything else anybody else has? All right. If not, I declare this meeting adjourned.